I'm going to jump right into the pros and cons, starting with Microsoft Dynamics. As Doreen mentioned, the dashboard is very configurable, and just like in Excel, where you can have a spreadsheet that is essentially a database, if you will. Think of that as your CRM list views. Every row is its own record and gives you information about that record. And you can see a whole bunch of records at once. Well, in Excel, you can take that spreadsheet and you can quickly create a chart using that data. And so what dashboards are in Microsoft Dynamics is essentially the chart view of what's available in the list view. So to have a dashboard with a chart on it, you need to start with a list view. But you can take any list view you want and create a chart or a dashboard from it. The only limitation, we'll get to this in the cons, is that you're limited to 7. So dashboards are very configurable, and they can be both system dashboards that come out of the box and are available for you to start using right away, or they can be personalized dashboards that you've created, again, based on the list views, which is always the starting point for a dashboard. The second pro for Microsoft Dynamics is something called a team members license, and this is unique to Dynamics. A team members license is very limited in what it can do. It can read, provided you have the permissions, because that's the key, you can see every piece of data in CRM. However, you can only edit 3 record types. And that means you can only edit or change or input information for contacts, for activities, and for notes. All other data types you can read, but you can't change. So it's a very limited license, but it's a great option sometimes for supporting functions like accounting, or maybe even somebody in operations who just needs to get into the CRM and check out some data, but never really enter data. It's very cost effective, and we'll talk about pricing here in a little bit, but this is a significantly reduced offering in terms of price, with still a lot of great capability for users who just need to look in the CRM and not make a lot of changes. As you might imagine, Microsoft Dynamics 365 is very, very good at integrating with other Microsoft products. And so Doreen just showed you how it links with Outlook. Right within your Outlook, you can have a panel that shows you your Microsoft CRM, and you can drill down and make changes and updates. Power BI is another really great tool that integrates very, very well with Microsoft Dynamics 365. Power BI is the Microsoft Business Intelligence offering. Teams has a wonderful integration. In fact, we use Teams as our phone system and our internal chat system, etc. And we have it connected to our Dynamics 365 so that when I go to a contact record and I want to click on a phone number, it actually goes to Teams, and Teams says, do you want me to call this number? And I click on it, yes, and it auto dials. So really great integration with other Microsoft products. It also integrates really well with a digital marketing automation platform called Click Dimensions. Click Dimensions is a fully featured platform that helps you with things like email campaigns, managing events, connecting your website to your CRM, etc. And early on, Click Dimensions and Microsoft entered into a relationship that actually allowed Click Dimensions to build their solution right within the Dynamics 365 platform. Now, it's not there automatically. You have to buy it and you have to set it up. But once you set it up, it's actually completely integrated in your Dynamics 365. So from within your CRM, you have access to all of the Click Dimensions features, which is very unique. Another pro for Dynamics 365 are the multiple channels for actually buying the product. You can certainly go to a partner like SwigTech or TopLine to buy the product. You could even buy it online if you wanted, but there's a number of different choices for actually getting your hands on the product. And depending on how you need support for getting it installed, it might influence the partner that you pick. Another pro for Microsoft Dynamics is pricing. Doreen will have a slide strictly on pricing, which we'll get to in a minute, but they are advantaged in pricing versus Salesforce, and we'll talk about that in a little more detail. The cons for Microsoft 365 are, the dashboard, while it's awesome and great, it is limited to 7 elements. You don't have that same limitation in Salesforce. It is higher. So that is kind of a unique con. If you have more than 7 things you want to be looking at, you might just have to look at a couple of dashboards rather than one. And there are many, many dashboards, again, depending on what you want to look at. They come in the system views as well as personal views, and for all different record types. Another con is there is no what we call out-of-the-box campaign hierarchy. And what do I mean by campaign hierarchy? Well, I mean like having a parent-child relationship within campaigns. So let's take brain foods as an example. Brain foods can be created as a parent campaign, potentially, and each of the individual webinars can be child campaigns. And with a campaign hierarchy, you would be able to look at an individual brain food event and see not only the attendees, but any other data associated with that at an individual level, which is kind of the drill down detail. But with a parent relationship for all of Brain Food Series, you can look at all of the different brain food events that have been done, and they would be summarized. There is out-of-the-box campaign hierarchy with Salesforce. There is not with Microsoft. You never really get a true hierarchy in Dynamics 365, but we can help you simulate a hierarchy using fields and naming conventions so you can get similar reporting. So it's not impossible. There is a workaround, but it's just not out of the box. And then the other con for Microsoft is while they do offer options for nonprofits, it is far less developed than what you'll find in Salesforce. So with that, let me jump to the Salesforce slide and talk about the really great things about Salesforce. Salesforce has some dashboard flexibility that you don't get with Microsoft. You can have up to 20 elements or 20 components on a Salesforce dashboard, versus the 7. And these can be a mix of charts and dials and single data targets if you wanted to see how you're doing against a singular goal. So there's a lot of flexibility. Overall, a little bit more maybe than in Microsoft. And again, you can have up to 20 elements. Trailheads are a huge pro for Salesforce. Trailheads are what they call their online training course. And they are extremely extensive and yet very modular at the same time. So you could have one training track for a sales team, a different training track for maybe a system administrator. The online training includes a lot of gamification and some really fun characters who kind of cheer you on as you're taking the classes. And the training is just extremely comprehensive. So you can spend a lot of time, maybe even weeks or months or potentially years, learning everything that there is to know about Salesforce, or you can kind of short circuit that timeline and work with a partner who knows a lot of those tips and tricks and can share them with you, and you can spend less time training. But trailheads are very, very extensive. Both systems offer a mobile interface. The only advantage that Salesforce has is that number one, it's been around for more than 20 years and it's only ever been a cloud option. There's never been an on-premise option like there has with Microsoft. So everything's always been online. So their mobile interface is probably a little bit more well developed. You can pretty much do anything in the mobile interface that you can do online. Obviously, if you're entering a lot of data, you're going to want a keyboard because you'll just be faster with a keyboard than trying to fat finger it into a phone or a tablet. But for anybody who does traveling and needs to access CRM data in a mobile environment, Salesforce has a really great option. They also do a really nice job with Gmail integration. And as you can imagine, Microsoft tends to lean a little more toward Outlook, whereas Salesforce tends to be a little more agnostic about their email tool and integration with that. And so they probably have a little bit better Gmail integration as well. Salesforce users, they can be very passionate and sometimes almost evangelistic about how they use their system. And so there are a lot of really thriving online success communities where they can offer tips and tricks and advice as needed. And they also offer online communities for some of their industry verticals. So what Salesforce has done is taken their basic platform and offered verticals like Financial Cloud, which is basically the Salesforce CRM designed such that the out-of-the-box version is very appropriate for users in a financial market, and will offer features that would be expected in that market that might not be needed in others. So not only are the success communities very helpful, but those industry verticals are, as well as their marketplace, which is where you can find all the third-party tools that Salesforce has to integrate. Microsoft has a marketplace as well, but Salesforce probably is a little bit more robust and more options. So what are the cons for Salesforce? It's an absolutely fabulous platform, but obviously it has downsides, just like Microsoft. Probably the biggest three are the top ones I've listed here. Pricing, it can be significantly more expensive than Dynamics 365, depending on which edition you're using. Also, there's really only one place to buy Salesforce subscription, and that is from Salesforce. And so they typically have fairly aggressive quarterly and annual targets. So if one of their account executives senses that you might be a candidate, they can be very persistent in reaching out to you and following up and trying to get you to choose their product over something else. Another con for Salesforce is its proprietary Apex code language. If you need to do any sophisticated scripting to customize your platform, then you need to either know Apex coding or work with a partner who knows Apex coding who can do that for you. A small but potentially important downside to Salesforce is the fact that they offer no static lists. So let me just talk about static lists versus dynamic lists for just a second. A static list is a list of specific accounts or contacts or opportunities that you decide, and it only ever exists of that list. So for example, let's say you're a nonprofit and you had 20 founding donors. Those 20 aren't going to change because you only have founding donors once. So you might want a static list for those founding donors. And in Microsoft, you can create a static list. You might have another list where you say, show me the donors who've given $1,000 last year. And those founding members might be on that list, but there might be a whole bunch of other members as well. So with a dynamic list, you would go out and look for the criteria, show me all the people who gave $1,000, and depending on what they gave, people either move on to that list or off of that list. That's a dynamic list. And so you could create the sort of founding members list, the static list in Salesforce, by creating a new field or adding a new field and saying, show me who's a founding member, yes or no, and then search on that criteria. But lists in Salesforce are always built on criteria. You can't create just a static list. So you can get around that by creating a field and essentially doing the same thing.